This 6-year-old girl was brutally thrown out of a fancy restaurant after trying to steal a piece of bread. The millionaire owner of the establishment even hit her. But when a notebook fell from the child's pocket, everything changed. What was written in those pages would forever shake the lives of both of them. Subscribe to the channel to receive heartwarming stories every day. The main hall of the Crystal Imperial restaurant mirrored its owner's soul. Cold, impeccable, and mercilessly expensive. Each table was positioned with millimeter precision, each crystal polished to shine like a diamond under the golden light of the chandeliers. The millionaire watched everything from the upper mezzanine, his dark eyes scanning every detail like a hawk in search of imperfections. At 42 years old, he had built a culinary empire that spanned 3 countries. His hands, always immaculate in Italian leather gloves, had never known the weight of need. His angular face, marked by an almost imperceptible scar on his chin, a reminder of a teenage brawl, rarely softened into smiles. His employees feared him more than they respected him, and he preferred it that way. The routine was sacred. He arrived at 7 in the morning, reviewed each sector, adjusted what he considered inadequate, and stayed in his office until late at night. Relationships? They were temporary contracts, family, a nuisance he had learned to avoid since his parents died, leaving him only fortunes and emotional scars. That Tuesday afternoon, the business was particularly bustling. Executives discussed deals over lobster dishes. Socialites flaunted expensive jewelry while savoring $1,000-a-bottle wines. The millionaire felt an empty satisfaction as he watched his world function like a well-oiled machine. Meanwhile, on the busy streets of downtown, a small figure fought against the hunger that had gnawed at her stomach for 3 days. The 6-year-old girl dragged her bare feet across the hot asphalt. Her tangled brown hair stuck to her face, dirty with dust and dried tears. The blue dress, which must have once been beautiful, was now torn and stained. She didn't fully understand why her mother could no longer get out of bed in the hospital. The nurses spoke in complicated words. Serious condition, no resources, limited time. All the girl knew was that she needed to find food, and above all, someone who could help her mother get better again. The small, crumpled notebook in her pocket was her most precious treasure. In it, she drew her hopes, her mother smiling again, a plate full of food, a house with a roof that didn't leak when it rained. And in the poorly written pages with a worn pencil, there was a letter addressed to the richest man in the city, because someone on the street had said that rich people had the power to solve impossible problems. The smell of food escaping from the restaurants on Main Street was a torture. She had tried to ask for help, but people hurried past, averting their eyes from her small, dirty figure. Some threw coins on the ground without stopping, others pushed her away with disgust. Hunger, however, was stronger than humiliation. That's when she saw the golden door of the Crystal Imperial open and an elegant couple come out laughing. For an instant, the girl glimpsed the golden interior, the laden tables, the paradise that existed on the other side of the glass door. Without thinking, her thin little legs ran towards the opportunity. The millionaire was checking the reservation book when the first scream echoed through the hall. He looked up from the mezzanine and saw the confusion forming near table 17. A small, dirty stain moved among the elegant waiters, like a wounded bird in a symphony. "What the hell is going on?" he muttered, descending the stairs with firm, irritated steps. The girl had managed to grab a piece of French bread from a basket on the table before the screams began. The first to react was the waiter, then an indignant customer, and in seconds, 2 burly security guards appeared from nowhere. Her small hands trembled as she held the bread to her chest, as if it were a priceless treasure. "Drop that now, you little brat!" shouted one of the security guards, trying to snatch the bread from her hands. But the girl cowered, protecting the food with her whole body. Hunger was stronger than fear. The millionaire arrived on the ground floor exactly when the situation reached its peak. Customers watched with a mixture of disgust and morbid curiosity, some recording with their cell phones, others whispering indignant comments about the security of this place. His reputation, built brick by brick over 2 decades, was being threatened by a hungry child. "Let her go." His voice cut through the air like a blade. The security guards immediately backed away, still keeping the girl between them. He approached slowly, his eyes fixed on the child. She was smaller than she looked from a distance and much thinner. The inadequate clothes hanging on her frail little body told a story of abandonment that he knew well, not from his own experience, but from having grown up watching these creatures through the windows of armored cars. "Do you know where you are?" he asked, his voice low but filled with authority. The girl looked up for the first time. Her eyes were large, brown like dark honey, and they shone with a mixture of terror and determination that hit him like a punch in the gut. For a second, something trembled inside him, a distant memory, an echo of vulnerability that he preferred to keep buried. I just wanted some food," she whispered, her voice hoarse from crying. "For my mother too." The answer should have been simple. Call the police, get rid of the problem, resume normalcy. But there was something in the girl's eyes that irritated him deeply, not because of her presence, but because of the way she stirred parts of himself that he kept carefully frozen. "Your mother?" The question came out before he could stop it. "She's sick, in the hospital. I need—" The girl tried to explain, but the words got jumbled with sobs. The millionaire's irritation grew, not with the child, but with himself for wasting a time on this. The customers kept watching, some whispering, others clearly recording the scene. Every second that passed was a loss for his image. "Get this thing out of here," he ordered the security guards, gesturing at the girl as if she were an unwanted object. "And let this not be repeated. No, please." The girl wriggled in the security guard's arms, the bread still pressed against her chest. "I have a letter. I wrote to the richest man in the city. Maybe it's you." The millionaire paused. There was something desperately naive in the way she spoke, as if she genuinely believed that words on paper could move mountains. He almost smiled at the irony. If she knew how little he cared for letters, pleas, or tears. "Get her out of here," he repeated more firmly. That's when she began to truly resist, not with violence, but with the desperate tenacity of someone who has nothing left to lose. In the process, the small, crumpled notebook slipped from her pocket, falling open on the polished marble floor. The millionaire automatically lowered his eyes. The open page showed a child's drawing made with a worn pencil. A female figure with long hair lying in a bed, and a small child holding her hand. Above, written in crooked letters, "Mom, get well soon." Something icy ran down his spine. The security guards carried the girl towards the exit, while she continued screaming about the letter, about her sick mother, about just wanting some food. The millionaire stood still, watching the notebook on the floor as if it were a bomb about to explode. "Sir?" One of the waiters approached hesitantly. "Shall I throw this in the trash?" "Don't touch it," he ordered curtly. The customers slowly resumed their conversations, the hum of normality returning to fill the environment. But the millionaire felt as if he were watching everything through an aquarium. The sounds arrived muffled, distorted. His eyes remained fixed on the notebook. He slowly bent down and picked it up. The pages were yellowed and some torn, clearly handled countless times by small, dirty hands. As he leafed through it, a strange sensation grew in his chest. Not pity, he told himself, just morbid curiosity. The drawings followed one another, a house with sun and clouds, a plate full of food, 2 figures holding hands under a rainbow. The childish naivety should have irritated him, but instead it created a growing discomfort, as if he were invading something sacred. It was on the 5th page that he found the letter. The handwriting was irregular, some words blurred by old. Tears. To the richest man in the city, my name is... I don't know how to write properly, but my mom is very sick, and the doctors say they need money for her to get better. I tried to get it, but nobody gives me a job because I'm small. If you read this, please help me. I'll do anything. I'll clean your house, wash your clothes. I won't eat much. I just want my mum to get better. Thank you, the girl who lives in the hospital. The millionaire closed the notebook abruptly, as if the words had burned his fingers. He went back upstairs to the mezzanine with quick steps, trying to physically distance himself from those lines that seemed to echo in his mind. From his desk, he could see the street through the glass windows. The girl was sitting on the sidewalk. On the other side, leaning against the wall of a commercial building. Even at a distance, he could see that she was still holding the piece of bread, eating slowly, making it last. Her eyes remained fixed on the golden door of the restaurant, as if expecting something miraculous to happen. "Sir?" His personal secretary came up the stairs. "The reporters are calling. Someone posted a video of the situation. They want a statement." "What statement?" he muttered, still watching the girl on the sidewalk. "About the child who invaded the restaurant. The video is spreading on social media. Some are calling it cruel, others saying it was necessary." He looked away from the window, irritated. "It wasn't cruel, it was necessary. This is a business, not a charity." "Yes, sir, but maybe a symbolic donation to a children's NGO could..." "No." The answer was categorical. "We will not feed this kind of behavior. If we start rewarding invasions, we'll soon have a crowd at the door." The secretary nodded and retreated, but the millionaire knew she was not convinced. Few of his employees understood the need to maintain rigid boundaries. He had built his empire on discipline and inflexible rules. Giving in once meant opening a precedent for 1,000 other concessions. Still, his eyes returned to the window. The girl was still there, now lying on the cold ground using a cardboard box as a pillow. The notebook was open beside her, as if she were rereading her own words. The millionaire tried to get back to work, but the lines of the financial reports blurred before his eyes. The image of the letter written in childish handwriting overlapped the numbers, creating an irritating interference in his usual concentration. "She'll give up soon," he muttered to himself. "She'll look for another place to get food." But when the sun began to set and he looked again through the window, the girl was still there. Night fell on the city like a heavy cloak, and the movement on the streets decreased considerably. The Crystal Imperial was closing. The last customer had left 20 minutes ago. The employees were finishing cleaning the hall. The millionaire, however, remained in his office, pretending to review contracts he already knew by heart. The truth was that he couldn't stop looking out the window. The girl had huddled against the wall, visibly shivering in the night cold. She used the notebook as if it were a blanket, pressed against her chest. He could see that she dozed and woke up with a start, frightened by the noises of the street or by people who passed too close. "Sir," the night manager came up the stairs. "We're closing. Do you need anything before we leave?" "That child," the millionaire said without taking his eyes off the window. "Is she still there?" The manager looked in the indicated direction. "Yes, sir. Do you want us to call the police? Vagrancy is a crime and..." "No." The answer came out faster than he intended. "Don't call anyone." But sir, she can scare away customers tomorrow. People like that usually attract others and..." I said no. The tone was final, ending the discussion. The manager retreated, confused, leaving the millionaire alone with his turbulent thoughts. He went down to the empty hall, the lights already dimmed, and approached the window. Up close, he could better see the girl's face. Even in her restless sleep, the marks of suffering were evident. There were bruises on her arms, scratches on her legs, signs that life on the streets was crueler than any child should endure. Without realizing what he was doing, he unlocked the front door. The cold night air hit him as a reminder of reality. He crossed the street with hesitant steps, stopping a few meters from the sleeping girl. Up close, she seemed even smaller, more fragile. Her clothes were damp with dew and she was shivering even in her sleep. "Girl," he called softly. She woke. With a start, her eyes wide with terror. For a moment she seemed ready to flee, but then she recognized him. "You're the man from the restaurant," she whispered, her voice hoarse from the cold. "Yes." He didn't know what else to say. He was acting against all his instincts of self-preservation, against decades of conditioning that had taught him to keep his distance from other people's problems. "Did you read my letter?" There was hope in her brown eyes, an expectation that made him feel even more uncomfortable. "I did." He squatted down beside her, a position he hadn't taken in years, at a child's level. About your mother." "She's very ill," the girl interrupted, the words pouring out. "The doctors say she needs surgery, but it costs a lot of money. I tried to get a job, but nobody wants a kid. I know how to clean, I know how to cook a little, I can learn anything." The desperation in her voice was real, palpable. The millionaire felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, the genuine urge to help without expecting anything in return. "What hospital is she in?" The question came out before he could censor it. "St. Francis Hospital, in room 312. But they said that if I don't get the money soon..." She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. He knew St. Francis, an overburdened public hospital where cases without financial resources were treated like numbers in statistics. If the girl's mother really needed urgent surgery, time was running out. "Do you have any other relatives?" he asked. The girl shook her head. "Just me and my mom. It's always been like that." The absolute vulnerability of that answer hit him like a punch in the stomach. He himself had grown up without consistent father figures, but he had never experienced the total insecurity of not having anywhere to go. "Come," he said, getting up abruptly. "You'll freeze to death out here." The girl's eyes widened. "Come where?" "Inside." "Temporarily," he added quickly, more to himself than to her. "Just until we decide what to do." She got up slowly, as if she were afraid the offer would disappear. She held the notebook against her chest and followed him across the street, her small steps echoing on the silent asphalt. When the golden door of the Crystal Imperial closed, behind them, the millionaire had the strange feeling that something irreversible had just happened. The interior of the restaurant looked like an enchanted palace in the girl's eyes. She turned slowly, admiring the crystal chandeliers, the elegant tables, the paintings on the walls. Her small hands touched everything with reverent delicacy, as if she feared breaking some priceless treasure. "Do you live here?" she asked, her voice full of admiration. "No, I live somewhere else." The millionaire watched her reactions with a mixture of discomfort and curiosity. "This is just my restaurant. It's the most beautiful place I've ever seen," she sighed, stopping in front of a table that was still set. "It looks like something out of a movie." He went to the kitchen and returned with a plate of food, quality leftovers that would normally be discarded. For the girl, however, it was a banquet. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, murmuring, "Thank you," between bites. While she ate, the millionaire leafed through the notebook again. In addition to the drawings and the letter, there were pages with writing attempts, loose words practiced repeatedly. "Mom, hospital, help, please." A survival vocabulary that no child should master. "Do you go to school?" he asked. The girl stopped eating and lowered her eyes. "I used to, but when my mum got sick, I had to stop to take care of her, and then I couldn't go back anymore." "How long has your mother been sick?" "About 4 months. First she just coughed a lot, then she got weak, then she couldn't get out of bed anymore." The words came out broken, charged with a pain that weighed too much for such small shoulders. The millionaire felt a strange twinge in his chest. 4 months, enough time for a child to turn from a student into a street wanderer. Enough time for hunger and despair to extinguish someone's childhood. And where have you been sleeping? Sometimes in the hospital, when the guards don't see me. Sometimes on the street. Sometimes somewhere I find. She spoke as if it were the most natural thing in the world, without self-pity, just reporting facts. The naturalness with which she described a life of abandonment disturbed him more than if she had cried or lamented. There was a resignation in that voice that shouldn't exist in a 6-year-old. "Do you know my name?" he asked, not knowing why. She shook her head. "I only knew you were rich when I saw how people looked at you. And I saw your name on the door. It's written out there, but I don't know how to pronounce it right." He almost smiled. His name was engraved in golden letters at the entrance, along with several awards and certificates. For a child who could barely read, it must have seemed like mysterious hieroglyphs. "And what's your name?" And the question came naturally, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. For a moment she hesitated. Then she whispered a name that he didn't hear properly, but that sounded like music in her small mouth. "Beautiful name," he commented, surprising himself with the sincerity of the observation. She smiled, the first genuine smile he had seen on her face. It completely transformed her features, revealing the child who still existed beneath the layers of suffering and forced maturity. "Ah, you going to help me?" she asked then, direct as only children know how to be. The question hung in the air between them. He could feel the weight of expectations that he hadn't asked to carry. He could imagine the legal, social, financial complications that would follow. He could foresee the headaches, the judgments, the irreversible changes that decision would bring to his carefully controlled life. "I'll see what I can do," he finally replied. It wasn't a promise, but to the girl it seemed like enough. She nodded seriously, as if they were closing a life-or-death contract, which in a way, perhaps they were. The millionaire settled the girl in his private office, improvising a bed with sofa cushions. She settled down with the notebook hugged, her eyes already heavy with sleep. But before falling asleep, she murmured something that made him stop at the door. "Thank you for not sending me away again." The millionaire spent a sleepless night in his penthouse, but not for the usual reasons. It wasn't financial reports or business strategies that occupied his mind. It was the face of a 6-year-old child and the words scribbled in a crumpled notebook. He returned to the restaurant earlier than usual, finding the girl still asleep, curled up on the office sofa. In the daylight, he could better see the details that the night had obscured. The sickly paleness of her skin, the extreme thinness of her arms, the deep, dark circles that shouldn't exist in someone so young. She woke when he entered, startled, for a moment before recognizing him. "You're back," she said, as if this were a genuine surprise. "I work here," he replied more abruptly than he intended. "I thought maybe you'd changed your mind." There was a disarming vulnerability in her honesty. The millionaire sat behind the desk, trying to maintain a professional distance that no longer felt natural. "About your mother, I need to know more details. Full name, attending physician, diagnosis." The girl's eyes lit up with renewed hope. She recited the information she knew, some incomplete, some inaccurate from a child's perspective, but enough for him to make a few calls. 2 hours later, he had a complete picture of the situation. The girl's mother, a young woman who had worked as a cleaner until she got sick, was hospitalized with a serious condition that required urgent surgery. Without health insurance, without resources, without family, the case had been classified as non-priority in the public system queue. 27 years old, he murmured, reading the medical report he had managed to obtain. Too young to be. Dying too old to be naive. It was then that he decided to see for himself. St. Francis Hospital was everything he expected. Overcrowded, smelling of disinfectant and despair, corridors full of people waiting for miracles that might never come. He went up to the third floor, accompanied by the girl, who held his hand tightly, a simple gesture that made him more uncomfortable than any million-dollar negotiation. Room 312 housed 4 beds. The girl's mother's was the closest to the window. A cruel irony, since she was in no condition to appreciate the view. The millionaire stopped at the door, observing the sleeping woman. She was young, as the report indicated, but the illness had left deep marks. Her brown hair was sparse on the pillow. Her skin had a worrying yellowish tone. Her breathing was labored, even with the help of machines. And then she opened her eyes. The millionaire's world stopped, even disfigured by the illness, even weakened by suffering. Those brown eyes were unmistakable. He knew them intimately and painfully. They had been the last face he had seen before running from his own heart 7 years ago. "Helena," he whispered, the name escaping his lips like a prayer. She blinked slowly, focusing on his face with difficulty. When recognition arrived, it was as if an electric current ran through the room. "You," was all she could manage to say, her voice weak but charged with a decade of unresolved emotions. The girl looked from one to the other, sensing the tension in the air without fully understanding its origin. "Do you know each other?" she asked innocently. The millionaire couldn't speak. Memories that he had spent years trying to bury exploded in his mind like fireworks. Helena laughing in his apartment, Helena crying when he said he wasn't ready for commitment, Helena screaming when he left for London without warning, leaving only a cold and formal letter about different paths. "Helena," he repeated, approaching the bed with trembling steps. "The girl. She's your daughter." The words came from Helena's lips like blades. "She's your daughter." The world collapsed around the millionaire. He looked at the girl, his daughter, and suddenly everything made sense. The determination in her brown eyes, the way she frowned when concentrated, even the way she held the pencil in her notebook. His traits scattered across her face like clues that he had been too blind to see. "Why did you never—" he began. "Never what?" Helena tried to sit up, her voice gaining momentary strength. "Never looked for you, never told you. You disappeared, changed your number, didn't answer my letters, blocked me from everything. I was pregnant and you just vanished." The girl, his daughter, looked from her mother to him, her eyes filling with tears. "Mum, don't fight. He's going to help us." The millionaire knelt beside the bed, his legs no longer able to support him. 7 years. He had lost 7 years of his own daughter's life, 7 years during which she had grown up without a father, without resources, struggling to survive. "I didn't know," he whispered, the words sounding pathetic even to his own ears. "You didn't know because you didn't want to know," Helena replied, but her voice was losing strength again. The machine next to the bed began to beep more rapidly. A nurse rushed in, checked the vital signs, and asked them to leave the room. "She needs to rest," she said firmly. "The agitation isn't good for her condition." The millionaire got up unsteadily, holding the hand of the girl, his daughter, who was crying silently. In the hallway, he leaned against the wall, trying to process the avalanche of revelations that had befallen him. "She's my mother," the girl said, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "And are you my father?" The simple and direct question hit him like lightning. He looked at her, really looked, and saw himself reflected in those brown eyes, in the silent determination, in the way she faced adversity that would bring adults down. "Yes," he whispered, the word coming out like a confession. "I am your father." The news spread like wildfire. In less than 24 hours, reporters surrounded the hospital, the restaurant, and even the millionaire's house. The headlines were cruel and sensational. Millionaire abandons daughter to her own devices. Child on the streets while father lives in luxury. The scandal that shakes the gastronomic empire. The millionaire tried to maintain his composure. While he arranged for Helena's medical care and provided a safe place for the girl to stay, but the external pressure was only the smallest of his problems. The real hell came from within his own family. "Have you completely lost your mind?" The voice of his older brother echoed through the restaurant's private office. 7 years, building this company, our reputation, our name, and you're going to throw it all away because of a... Watch your next words, the millionaire warned, a dangerous coldness in his voice. "Is she your daughter? Prove it. Where are the DNA tests? Where is the evidence? Any opportunist can show up with a child and make up a story." The girl was sitting on the office sofa pretending to draw in the notebook, but the millionaire could see that she was listening to every word. Her small shoulders were tense, and she was holding the pencil too tightly. "The tests are being arranged," he replied coldly, "but I don't need paperwork to recognize my own daughter. Your daughter." The brother laughed bitterly. "You didn't even know she existed, and now suddenly you want to play the father of the year? This is going to destroy everything we've built." "What we've built?" The millionaire's voice rose dangerously. "I built this empire. I put every brick, every penny, every drop of sweat into it. And if choosing to take care of my daughter is going to destroy it, then so be it." The brother approached, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial tone. "Think with your head, not your heart. Pay for the woman's surgery, give the child some money, make sure she gets an education. But do it discreetly, out of the spotlight. You don't have to admit it publicly." "Are you suggesting that I abandon my daughter for a second time?" "I'm suggesting you protect what it took a lifetime to build. The investors are nervous, the partners are questioning, the competitors are taking advantage of the situation. In a week, you could lose $1 million contracts." The girl stopped drawing. She lifted her eyes from the notebook and looked directly at the millionaire. She said nothing, but there was a silent question in those brown eyes. "Are you going to abandon me again?" "Get out of my office," the millionaire said to his brother, without taking his eyes off his daughter. "You are making a mistake you will regret for the rest of your life." "Maybe. But it won't be the mistake of abandoning my daughter again." The brother left, slamming the door, but the millionaire knew that this would not be the last attempt to make him change his mind. The family, the partners, the investors, everyone would come with rational arguments about reputation, money, and consequences. But when he looked at the girl, who had gone back to drawing as if nothing had happened, he knew that no argument would be strong enough. "Are you afraid?" he asked, sitting next to her on the sofa. "Of what?" she replied without lifting her eyes from the drawing. "Of me. Of what people are saying. Of how our life is going to change." She paused the pencil and looked at him seriously. "Are you going to take care of my mother?" "Yes." "Are you going to send me away?" "Never again." "Then I'm not afraid." She returned to the drawing, adding colorful flowers around 2 figures holding hands. That night, alone in his penthouse, the millionaire received calls from lawyers, accountants, business partners, and even politicians offering discreet solutions to his image problem. Everyone had strategies to minimize the scandal, protect the business, make the situation disappear. He turned off the phone and watched the city through the panoramic windows. Down below, millions of people lived their lives, faced their own dramas, made decisions that would define their destinies. For the first time in decades, he wasn't thinking about profits or losses. He was thinking about a 6-year-old girl who had spent months sleeping on the streets because he hadn't had the courage to face the consequences of his own actions 7 years ago. The phone rang again. It was his personal lawyer. "We need to talk urgently," the tense voice said. "Your brother is moving pieces to question your ability to manage the company. He is claiming that your recent decisions are emotionally compromised and detrimental to business." The millionaire closed his Eyes, feeling the weight of the battle that was just beginning, St. Francis Hospital had become a besieged fortress. Reporters camped at the entrance. Private security patrolled the corridors, and Helena was being transferred to a private wing of the best hospital in the city. The millionaire had hired the best doctors, but he also knew that his every move was being watched and judged. The girl followed everything with attentive eyes, absorbing the complexity of a situation she shouldn't have to understand. She had grown up quickly in recent days, as if the revelation of paternity had accelerated her maturity. "The people on television are talking about us," she commented, while they waited outside the operating room where Helena was undergoing a delicate operation. "Yes, they are." He saw no point in lying to her. "Do they think you're a bad person?" The question caught him off guard. "Some do." "And you? Do you think you're a bad person?" The millionaire was silent for a long moment. It was a question he had been avoiding asking himself. "I think I was a cowardly person, and cowardly people sometimes do bad things." "But you're not cowardly anymore," she stated with childish conviction. "Cowardly people don't face the cameras and the shouting. Cowardly people run away." The simple wisdom of that observation struck him deeply. She was right. He wasn't running. This time, for the first time in his adult life, he was facing the consequences of his actions head-on. The door to the operating room opened, and the chief physician came out with a serious expression. The millionaire stood up immediately, his heart pounding. "The surgery was successful," the doctor announced. "We were able to remove the entire tumor, and the prospects are very good. She will need follow-up and treatment, but the prognosis is optimistic." The girl began to cry, not with sadness, but with a relief so intense that she couldn't contain it. The millionaire hugged her for the first time, feeling how she clung to him with desperate strength. "Mommy's going to be okay?" she sobbed against his chest. "Yes, she will. She's going to be okay." While Helena recovered from the anesthesia, the millionaire resolved the legal issue that most concerned him. He sought out the best family law firm in the city, determined to obtain official custody of his daughter. "The process can be complicated," warned the lawyer, an experienced woman with kind but realistic eyes. "You are not on the birth certificate. There was abandonment for 7 years, and now there is media interest. The district attorney's office will want to ensure that this is not just a marketing ploy." "It's not marketing," he replied firmly. "She's my daughter. I believe in you, but you need to be prepared for intense scrutiny. They will investigate your personal life, your emotional stability, your ability to provide paternal care. And there's another problem." "What?" "Your brother has filed a lawsuit questioning your mental competence to make business decisions. He is arguing that your recent choices demonstrate emotional instability. If this is pursued, it may affect the custody process." The millionaire felt the anger rise like volcanic lava. His own brother was trying to use his daughter as a weapon in a corporate battle. "What can I do?" "Show consistency. Demonstrate that your decision is permanent, not impulsive. And most importantly, prove that you can be both a good father and a competent businessman." That afternoon, he called a press conference in the main hall of the Crystal Imperial. Journalists from all over the country attended. Television cameras transformed the elegant restaurant into a media circus. The millionaire stepped onto the small stage set up for the occasion, wearing the best suit he owned, but feeling more vulnerable than he had ever felt in a $1 million negotiation. "I know you have many questions," he began, his voice firm despite the nerves, "and I will answer them with the honesty that my daughter deserves." The flashes fired, the cameras focused, and he began to tell the truth, the whole truth, about Helena, about the cowardice of 7 years ago, about the discovery of fatherhood, about his determination not to repeat the mistakes of the past. "I'm not going to lie and say it was easy to find out that I have a daughter who went hungry while I dined in expensive restaurants," he said, his voice thickening with emotion. "I'm not going to pretend that I'm not ashamed to have taken 7 years to be man enough to take responsibility." A reporter raised her hand. "Don't you think it's a little too convenient to discover this paternity just when your company is facing tax investigations?" "My company is not facing tax investigations," he replied calmly. "That information is false. But if it was, I would face that too, because I will no longer run away from anything that is my responsibility. And if you have to choose between the company and the child..." The question hung in the air for a tense moment. In the front rows, he could see some of his partners, investors, and competitors, all awaiting his answer with morbid interest. "It's not a choice," he finally replied. "It's a priority. My daughter comes first, always." The murmur in the room increased. He knew that he had just made statements that his lawyers would consider imprudent, that his partners would consider detrimental to business. But for the first time in years, he had said exactly what he thought, without filters or strategic calculations. When he left the stage, he found the girl waiting backstage. She had watched everything on the office television. "You told the truth," she said. "Simple as that." "Yes, I did. My mother always says that the truth sometimes hurts, but it never really hurts." He knelt down to be at her height. "Your mother is a very wise woman." "I know, and you're learning to be wise too." The legal battle that followed was brutal and public. The millionaire's brother had gathered an arsenal of lawyers and evidence to prove that he was emotionally unstable and unfit as both a father and a business leader. Financial documents were scrutinized. Past relationships were exposed. Every decision made in recent months was questioned. Helena, still recovering from surgery but much stronger, testified in court with a dignity that impressed even the most cynical lawyers. She told of the relationship they had, of the lonely pregnancy, of the years of struggle to raise her daughter alone. "He didn't know," she said to the judge, her voice clear and firm. "I tried to contact him when I found out I was pregnant, but he had completely disappeared. Changed numbers, addresses, cut off all ties. It wasn't conscious abandonment, it was cowardice, yes, but not malice." The brother's defense attacked with vigor. "Cowardice that resulted in 7 years of neglect, a child growing up in poverty while the father accumulated millions. How can we trust that he will not run away again when the novelty wears off?" It was then that the girl asked to speak. The judge hesitated. It was irregular to allow a 6-year-old child to testify in such a complex case. But there was something in her silent determination that convinced him to make an exception. She went up to the witness stand with the same seriousness with which she had faced months of life on the streets. The crumpled notebook was in her small hands. She had insisted on taking it. "Can you tell me about your father?" asked the defense attorney gently. "He wasn't my father before," she replied with surprising clarity. "He was just a rich man who didn't know me. But now he is my father." "What's the difference?" She opened the notebook to a specific page and showed a drawing. It was different from the others, more recent, more detailed. It showed 3 figures, holding hands, a woman lying in a hospital bed, a small child and a tall man. "Before, when I drew our family, it was just me and my mother. Now he's there too. And when you draw someone in your family, it means they're always going to be there. But what if he changes his mind? What if he decides he doesn't want to be your father anymore?" The question was cruel, calculated to plant doubts. But the girl faced it with the wisdom of someone who had already survived abandonment once. "People can change their minds about a lot of things," she said, looking directly at the millionaire, "but not about real love. And he really loves me now." "How do you know?" "Because he didn't run away when it got hard. People who don't really love run away when it gets hard." The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Even the most experienced lawyers seemed touched by the sincerity of that response. The millionaire stood up, ignoring the protests of the lawyers. "Your Honor, may I speak?" The judge nodded, curious. "My daughter is right. I ran away once when it got hard. I ran away from Helena when she needed me. I ran away from responsibility. I ran away from the possibility of being a father. I spent 7 years building an empire to fill the void that this cowardice left in me." He turned to his brother, who was watching him with a tense expression. "You say I'm emotionally compromised? You're right. I'm committed to my daughter, to her mother, to being the man I should have been 7 years ago. And if that makes me unfit to lead a company, then maybe it's time for us to find new leaders." The murmur in the room grew, but he continued. "I resign as CEO. I sell my shares to whoever wants to buy them. I only keep the restaurants that I need to support my family, because I have discovered that it is worth more to be a good father than to be a rich and empty businessman." The brother stood up, furious. "You can't do that. It's crazy. You're going to destroy everything we've built." "I'm going to build something new," the millionaire replied calmly, "something that my daughter can be proud to inherit." The judge's gavel fell, ending the session for deliberation. But in the courthouse hallways, something extraordinary happened. Restaurant employees, suppliers, even some competitors approached the millionaire to express their support. "I've worked for you for 10 years, said the Crystal Imperial's head. "Chef, I've never seen you so human. If you want to start over, count me in." "My company has been supplying ingredients for 8 years, added a small business owner. "I've always admired your business, but only now do I admire the man behind it." That night, in the hospital waiting room where Helena was still recovering, the millionaire was sitting on the floor, playing with drawings with his daughter, when the lawyer arrived with the judge's decision. Shared custody initially, full custody. After 6 months, if there are no incidents, the judge was impressed with your willingness to sacrifice business for family. The girl looked at him with bright eyes. "What does custody mean?" "It means it's official now. You're my daughter and I'm your father. Forever." She threw herself into his arms with such force that she almost knocked him over. But he held her, firmly, silently promising that this time he would never let her fall again. 6 months later, the Crystal Imperial had been transformed into something completely different. The elegant hall was still there, but now there was an area reserved for families with a children's menu and space for children to play. Once a week, the restaurant served free meals to low-income families in the area. The millionaire, who now preferred to be called simply Dad by his daughter, had kept only 3 of the 15 restaurants he owned. The money from the sale of the other units and his business shares was used to create the Helena Foundation, an organization that offered medical and educational support to single mothers in vulnerable situations. Helena had recovered completely and worked as the foundation's coordinator. She and the ex-millionaire hadn't rekindled their romance. Too much water had passed under the bridge for that. But they developed a solid and respectful partnership in raising their daughter. The girl, now 7 years old, attended a private school near the hospital where her mother worked. Her grades were excellent, but what impressed the teachers most was her emotional maturity and her natural empathy with classmates who were facing difficulties. The crumpled notebook continued to be her most precious treasure. Now it had new pages, with colorful drawings of a complete family, mother, father, and daughter, always holding hands, always smiling. "Do you miss the old life?" Helena asked one afternoon while they watched the girl playing in the small park they had built behind the foundation's headquarters. The loneliness, the emptiness, the constant feeling that something important was missing? He smiled, shaking his head. "No, not for a second, but you lost so much money, so much power. I gained a daughter, I gained purpose. I gained the chance to look in the mirror without feeling ashamed." He stopped speaking for a moment, watching the girl teach a younger boy how to draw. You know what the biggest discovery was? What? That true wealth isn't measured in bank figures. It's measured in how many lives you touch, how many smiles you awaken, how much of a difference you make in the world. The girl ran to them, breathless from playing, and threw herself into her father's lap. Can I tell you something? Of course. Honey, remember when I wrote that letter to the richest man in the city? I remember, said the father, moved to remember how it all began. I thought a rich person was someone who had the most money, but now I know that a rich person is someone who has the most love. She looked at the two of them with her bright brown eyes. And you are the richest people I know. That night, after putting his daughter to bed, the ex-millionaire stood on the balcony of his simple apartment, very different from the luxurious penthouse he had sold, watching the stars. There were no crystal chandeliers there, no panoramic view of the city, no symbols of status to impress visitors, but there were photographs of his daughter everywhere. There were drawings stuck to the refrigerator. There were toys scattered around the living room. There was real life filling every corner. The phone rang. It was his brother, calling for the first time since the trial. I heard that the foundation won an international award, the embarrassed voice said. It did, for social impact on the lives of vulnerable children. And how is the girl? Well, very well. Growing, learning, being a child as she should have been from the beginning. There was a long pause. Then, you were right about priorities, about what really matters. I wasn't right. I was desperate to fix what had been broken. And did you succeed? The ex-millionaire looked through the open door of his daughter's room, where she slept peacefully, hugging the notebook that had changed their lives forever. I'm trying. Every day I'm trying. After hanging up, he took a sheet of paper and began to write, not a financial report or a business strategy, but a letter to his daughter for her to read when she was older. A letter about second chances, about love that transforms, about how a brave child can save a lost man. My dear daughter, you taught me that heroes aren't people without fear. They're people who do the right thing even when they're scared. That wealth isn't what you keep for yourself, but what you share with others. That family isn't about blood or DNA, but about choosing to love someone every day, even when it's hard. Thank you for choosing me as your father, even when I didn't deserve that choice. Thank you for teaching me that it's never too late to start over, as long as you have the courage to admit your mistakes and the determination to fix them. You saved me, daughter. On the day that notebook fell from your pocket, you saved my soul. With all the love in the world, your father, finally, truly. Outside, the city continued its nightly dance of lights and shadows. Millions of people lived. Their stories faced their challenges, made decisions that would define who they would become. But there, in that simple apartment, a man who was once a millionaire and a girl who was once invisible had found something that no fortune could buy. A family built on forgiveness, sustained by love, and strengthened by the certainty that some things in life are worth any sacrifice. The crumpled notebook rested on the girl's bedside table, its pages now filled with new dreams, new drawings, new hopes. And on the last page, written with the most careful handwriting she could manage, was a new message. Thank you, God, for giving me the dad I needed. And thank you for giving him the daughter he needed too. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to receive new stories every day. What would you do in the millionaire's place? Comment below and share this story with someone special.